Hello, I'm Kamali, taking you through some of the things people are talking about and some of the stuff they're sharing around the world on NewsFeed today. Airbnb says it will not allow lettings through its sites in the occupied West Bank. Ivanka Trump used a personal email account for some White House business. The internet waits for Trump supporters to say, lock her up. Mohammed bin Salman, a look at his last few months. And John Lewis, that John Lewis gets his own Christmas ad and John Lewis approves. We'll explain later.
Would you mind?
Oh, sorry, Mr. Lewis. I'll leave you to your tweeting.
Yeah.
Well, at the top of our news feed, Airbnb in the occupied territories. The letting site has been under pressure for years to not allow people to make money on homes built in illegal settlements in the occupied territories. And they finally listened and have gone some way to stopping it happening, but not the whole way.
Airbnb is removing 200 listings from its site, which are in the occupied West Bank.
Settlements are a violation of international law. They're a war crime. By doing business in or with settlements, Airbnb was both contributing to serious violations of international law and benefiting from a seriously discriminatory scheme where internationals and Israelis can stay in settlements, but Palestinians are effectively barred from entry. These are listings on land stolen from Palestinians who are barred from staying there.
Pressure has been growing on Airbnb to stop the advertising of lettings in the occupied territories.
So there's a scenario, and we've documented cases in the report, of a Palestinian landowner who not only cannot access his own land, which the Israeli army records show is his land, but can't even pay to stay in a property on his own land. So it's a reality, and it's the only case in the world where an Airbnb host is mandated by law to discriminate based on national or ethnic origin. It is a policy that was inconsistent with Airbnb's progressive position on anti-discrimination.
The West Bank was taken by Israel after the war in 1967. Israel has been building settlements in the area in violation of international law.
In many cases, not having access to this land means, living in economic squalor, a farmer not having an opportunity, for example, to be able to grow produce to earn a living. We spoke to one individual who was a U.S. citizen who spent years living in the United States and who, despite having the U.S. citizenship, wasn't able to access his property, which is actually the exact location of a listing on Airbnb. These are the kinds of cases you'll hear across the Palestinian territories.
Israel's continued expansion is one of many reasons Palestinians are fighting and protesting on a daily basis. The decision by Airbnb has been welcomed by Palestinians, but they point out Airbnb is still listing homes for rent in occupied East Jerusalem.
There do remain open questions regarding the situation in the Golan Heights in East Jerusalem, where much of the same analysis regarding the involvement in rights abuses by virtue of corporate activity would apply, and it should be a message heeded by Booking.com and dozens of other companies, Israeli, Palestinian, international, that continue to do business with settlements.
Now, Donald Trump called for Hillary Clinton to be locked up for her use of a private email server while she was Secretary of State. Now it turns out that his daughter has been doing the same thing as a member of his administration. Ivanka Trump sent thousands of emails where she discussed or relayed White House business. Well, the internet reacted as you'd expect. Here's some of what people said. This one said, "Who knew you could deliver karma via email?" This one, much the same. And whereas this one asks if Trump fans will now call for the first daughter to be locked up. Okay, look at some of the other things that caught our eye on social media. Now, is it Blink 182, Blink 182, or Blink 182? Well, you have no idea what I'm talking about? Lucky you. Now, the comedian Ian Carmel started all of this by tweeting that Brits and Americans pronounce the name of the American band differently. Big deal. Tomato, tomato, you may be thinking, but oh no, not in 2018. It became a thing, a corner of the internet with literally thousands of tweets. But it was all ended in a great way by a member of the band called Tom DeLonge, who wrote this. It's actually Blink 182, and people have been getting it wrong for years. And this sort of thing can happen with complex, thoughtful, elevated art. All the small things, eh?
Let's go for a walk. Where are we going? Huh? Where are we going?
Now, this video of a fireman who rescued a cat from a wildfire in the United States has done nearly 2 million views. The fireman's called Ryan Coleman, and he wrote on Facebook, "Kitty rescue, she just chilled on my neck and shoulders as I walked around." Now, Mohammed bin Salman, MBS to his friends, has gone from being praised by people for his apparent reforms to being accused of signing off the murder of a journalist here in Istanbul. But when you really think of it, he's always told us what kind of leader he is. People just didn't want to see it. Here's Ahmed.
He went from being Mr. Everything to Mr. Bonesaw in just a matter of days. But the Jamal Khashoggi killing is just the tip of the iceberg for Mohammed bin Salman, aka MBS, whose dark side has cemented a grim counter-revolutionary order across the Arab world. MBS has been the architect of Saudi Arabia's intervention in Yemen. Since 2015, the Saudi-led coalition has aerially bombarded its neighbor in an attempt to weaken the Iranian-backed Houthi rebels. But this has come at a huge humanitarian cost. Human rights organizations have reiterated that the coalition has indiscriminately targeted civilians, including hospitals and schools, killing more than 10,000 people in the process. And that's not all. As a result of Saudi and UAE blockade of the strategic port city of Hodeidah, half of Yemen's population, or almost 14 million people, are on the brink of starvation, which the UN warns would be the worst famine in 100 years. MBS caused further trouble outside the kingdom's borders by igniting the Qatar GCC crisis. On June 5, 2017, Saudi Arabia and 4 of its Arab allies cut diplomatic ties with Qatar and imposed a trade blockade on Doha. According to a report in The Intercept, MBS's initial plan included a military coup to seize control of Doha. But the plan fell through after pressure from then US Secretary of State Rex Tillerson. More than a year later, Qatar still remains blockaded and only reachable by air and sea. When Lebanon's Prime Minister Saad al-Hariri arrived in Saudi Arabia in November 2017, his phone was confiscated and he was forced to resign from his post live on Saudi television. It was a political scandal, perceived by many in Lebanon as a Saudi abduction of their head of state. It was only after weeks of French mediation that he finally returned home and rescinded his resignation. MBS recently made a joke about the abduction while sharing a panel with Hariri at an investment summit in Saudi Arabia.
ابغى اختم فقط بحاجه انه دوله الرئيس سعد جالس يومين في السعوديه فارجو ما تطلع اشاعات انه مخطوف.
MBS has been dubbed a reformer for introducing societal changes like allowing women to drive and opening the country's movie theaters for the first time in 30 years. In the 8 months after he was appointed Crown Prince, 133 people were executed. That's 16 executions every month, making it one of the top 5 countries for the number of executions per year. Despite being championed for campaigning for women's rights to drive, prominent female activists like Lujain Hathloul and Maisal Ammoudi remain in prison. And their crime? Protesting their right to drive. After his ascension to power, MBS made headlines in his treatment of any political rivals, even those within his own family. One of his first orders of business was rounding up and imprisoning hundreds of royals and leading businessmen in the country, in what is known as the Ritz-Carlton Purge. Some were reportedly tortured and at least one Saudi general died. It was billed as a move against corruption, but others saw it as a purge on those who had money and influence, and marginalized anyone in the country that could challenge MBS's claim to the throne. In light of Jamal Khashoggi's killing in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, international pressure to cut trade relations and arms deals with the MBS regime is mounting. Several corporations like Uber, Virgin, and JP Morgan Chase refused to attend a high-profile investment summit in Riyadh. And while Donald Trump said he won't back out of a $100 million weapons deal, many Republican senators are demanding sanctions against Saudi Arabia.
The MBS figure is, to me, toxic. He can never be a world leader on the world stage. I know what I'm going to do. We're going to sanction the hell out of Saudi Arabia.
There are also reports from within the Saudi royal family that pressure is mounting on King Salman Abdulaziz to relinquish his son's grip on power and hand back the title of Crown Prince to his nephew, Prince Mohammed bin Nayef. But it seems the father is sticking by his son. King Salman named MBS as the head of a new commission set up to investigate Khashoggi's death, despite the questions swirling around his role in the killing. And so, as the pieces of the MBS puzzle are put together, will he continue his sweep for power and keep committing human rights abuses inside and outside of the kingdom? Or will the royal family try and restore order to a once stable Saudi Arabia?
Okay, around the world now for some other stories you need to know this Tuesday. Well, they wear MAGA hats and go around fighting with anti-fascist groups and declare themselves to be reclaiming Western masculinity. They were founded by one of the guys who started Vice magazine in the 90s. His name is Gavin McInnes. They are the Proud Boys, and they're now being watched by the FBI as an extremist group. The Proud Boys have always lied about their racist core, but the FBI report states they have ties to white nationalism. Proud now, boys? This mosaic, stolen from Turkey in the 1960s by American looters, will be returned to its rightful homeland. The Gypsy Girl was taken from Gaziantep and sold in a New York art gallery in 1965. It's been on display at a university in Ohio. It's due back in this part of the world on the 26th of November. Instagram says it's going to stop what it calls inauthentic likes and followers. They say they'll go after accounts that are using third-party apps to try and boost their popularity. So if you're one of those people who care what a bunch of people you don't know think of you and have been allowing a random company to raise your follower numbers, Instagram says you're about to get an email. Now, Christmas commercials for big chain stores are always popular in parts of the world where Christmas matters. So this happened on the internet recently. My favourite British department store, John Lewis, always has great ads. This year's is with Elton John.
It's a little bit funny.
So every year people tweet John Lewis to tell them they love or hate the ad or say whatever else is on their mind. Well, the only problem is the Twitter handle John Lewis is not owned by the store, it's owned by this guy. And he sportingly responds to all the tweets he gets from people too lazy to make sure they're tweeting at the right place. And he'd become known for doing it with such good humour that Twitter made him his own ad. Have a look.
In the bleak midwinter, frosty tweets made moan. He said strong as iron, writing like a stone. Snow was falling, snow on snow, snow on snow.
Leah? Would you mind?
Oh, sorry, Mr. Lewis. I'll leave you to your tweeting. Same time next year?
Sure, yeah. Thanks.
Right on.
In the bleak mid-winter, long ago.
That's good stuff. And last up, animals doing stuff. And this one has been given a name, which means those who have put the video on the internet can give it a personality. This little thing has been called RuPaul after the famous American drag artist, and it bounces around like most Joeys do, although we have no idea how it is on the catwalk. I won't kiss it. That's all from the Newsfeed team. Reach out to me with your questions, comments, complaints, and suggestions. I'm at Kamali Melbourne. You'll find us 24/7 on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. Follow, subscribe, and add. See you again tomorrow.